Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. I am Kay. I'm here with David. David, who is you? And what is we doing here today?
Hi, I'm David. This is the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show, where every week, mostly, we talk about TTRPG stuff. How to be a better player, how to be a better GM, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusion, so that everybody can have a good time. Also, occasionally we talk trash about things, but
On occasion. Only on occasion, though.
and I have promised not to rant about chicken wings. I may go back on that. We will see.
You know, we are overdue for a chicken wing rant.
Right.
But yes, hello everyone. Welcome. Thank you for hanging out with us. You may have noticed I'm playing around with the overlay. I'm still figuring out exactly what the branding's going to be, but here we are. You know, baby steps sometimes. So welcome. I'm Kay. I'm your host. David and I are GMs, co-GMs, and David, we've only got 2 more episodes of Godplane.
Yep.
Our players are kind of freaking out because we're about to go fight the big bad, at least as far as they know, on Thursday. That's only 2 days away. And no one quite knows what that means.
Right. I mean, they should know what it means. They should know that it means pain and suffering, because that's what we bring. But such as
This is what they signed up for. Hey, Candace! Speaking of people on the God plane, we have Candace the Magnificent hanging out. But yes, we're going to talk. We want to talk about, and maybe Candace can also chime in and help us out a little bit, because neither you nor I know Savage Worlds very well. But we wanted to spend some time and talk about, like, resting mechanics and camping mechanics and long rest versus short rest and what happens in different systems and how you can actually make those, like, fun and interesting or terrible, as we did for Godplane. You do not like this convo. LOLOL. Sorry, Candace. Sorry. So, we're going to dive in first to the one that you and I know best. The ending of the Godplane, not the rests. Yes. You and I know 5e best. So let's
Yep.
start with that. Let's start with the softball.
So in TTRPGs, there's a mechanic known as resting, where you lay down and you take a nap. No.
I mean, I will
Uh.
take one of those.
Yeah. So in both older versions of Dungeons and Dragons and the current version, there's a sort of like downtime, and while everyone sort of assumes that you're going to sleep, it's really a way of taking care of like miscellany. So yeah, there's some sleeping, but there's also tending to your weapons, tending to your armor, bathing. Uh, if you're a spellcaster, it could be getting spellcasting components, and other sort of like personal things that you may or may not want to roleplay. And
Gay
one
drama.
like,
Yes, cannot forget the gay drama.
yeah, oh man. And one like itty bitty thing that you might do is like restore hit points and spell slots and other important mechanical things. But it is a mechanic that allows you to recover HP, and do other stuff. With 5e, it's split into short and long rest. Huh. So a short rest is at least an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Character does nothing more strenuous than eating, drinking, reading, and tending to wounds. And a character can spend 1 or more hit dice at the end of a short rest, up to the character's maximum number of hit dice, which is equal to the character's level. And for those who don't know, a hit dice is based on your class. You have a die that is associated with your class. I think wizard is like 1d6, fighter is 1d10, and so on. And that is associated with your HP every level. So if you're a wizard and you hit level 2, then you roll a d6, and that number is added to your HP total. You're also given a number of die per level up to your level for restoring HP um, during short rests. So again, if you're a level 2 wizard and you're taking a short rest, then you get to roll a d6 twice, and that number is the HP that you recover.
And yeah, 5e, and then long rests are very straightforward. You sit and you rest. Now, not every single race and class does it exactly the same way. So, like elves trance, and they only need 4 hours. Certain, like the reborn, don't actually sleep. There's a bunch of races that don't sleep, but they still need a rest.
Do Warforged sleep?
I think they have to power down. I do think they have like a... It's not sleep, but it is like they remain conscious but dormant.
Big mood.
It is a big mood. Hey, Jason, how are you? And yeah.
You don't need to eat, drink, breathe, sleep, and magic can't put you to sleep. Sentry's rest. When you take a long rest, you must spend at least 6 hours in an inactive, motionless state rather than sleeping. In this state, you appear inert, but it doesn't render you unconscious, and you can see and hear as normal. Like I said, big mood.
Yeah, I've been there. Definitely been there, especially after conventions.
Yep. Anyone who has been up at 2 o'clock in the morning scrolling on AO3 or Tumblr, they know the life of a Warforged.
Yes. So, that's the basics, but one of the cooler things around this time is it's actually a really good time for your party to sit and talk and share stories and, as Candace said, have gay drama.
Mm-hmm.
Got a sniffle. Oh. You got the sniffle. I was like, has someone else also got the sniffle? It's been
Nope, just me.
Yeah, it's been a week. It's only Tuesday, your point. So I've also been, I'm about to sneeze, and this could be a problem. As some of you know, I have dabbled in Starfinder. In fact, a new episode of the Emergency Bar podcast is coming out tomorrow, and I'm excited. It's a good one. Starfinder's long rests are pretty heckin' brutal. So in 5e, you make death saving throws. So if you hit 0 hit points, you roll a d20, and if it's a 1 or 1 to 9, it's a failure, and if it's 10 to 20, it's a success. And if you hit 3 fails, you're dead. If you hit a nat 1, it's 2 automatic fails. If you hit 3 successes, you come back to life. You stabilize. You're no longer bleeding out. And if you hit a nat 20, you come back with 1 hit point. That's how they handle it. Starfinder, and I don't actually know all that much about Pathfinder 2e yet. I would have to look it up. But like Starfinder and old school Pathfinder, instead of doing that, they have resolve points. So you have a number of resolve points based upon your race class. There are various things that can impact it. So you have stamina points that are basically shields. So you eat through your stamina points first, and then it eats away at your hit points. And on a long rest, you heal up 1 hit point per character level per long rest. Yeah.
Woof.
Yeah. And if you do bed rest, if you don't get out of bed for 24 hours, you get 2 hit points per character level.
Yikes.
So, there's a lot of you use your healing spells and then you sleep to restore your slots because, yeah, that hurts. I know that in Pathfinder 2E, they've changed it though. Let me see. In Pathfinder 2E, you recover hit points equal to your Constitution modifier multiplied by your level per long rest.
Okay, that's a little more forgiving.
If they rest without shelter or comfort, at the GM's discretion, you can reduce this healing by half.
Zoinks.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be a little bit brutal.
Yeah.
I know Candace, who's hanging out in chat, knows a whole lot about Savage Worlds. Candace, if you have the spoons to share a summary of that, because I know everything there is just a little bit different. David, we were talking about Urban Shadows.
Yes. So
which I have feels about.
Right. So Urban Shadows is a little so one of the great things about having all sorts of different TTRPGs is the different approaches. And Urban Shadows has a much more active approach to quote unquote downtime. And it's not, a short rest or a long rest. It is a different phase of the game that is equally active. So, and I'm looking at the quick start guide from Urban Shadows 2nd Edition, which you can find on Drive-Thru RPG. And to sum up, you have your character engagement time where you interact with other characters, you have encounters, you do things, and there's a big emphasis on both debts and sort of like social currency and social manipulation. And so you have something like turn to violence or escape a situation or persuade an NPC, and circle moves where people who or whatever group you're a part of, there are things that you can do within that. And it's honestly, I find Urban Shadows a little hard to unpack because there's just a lot going on.
Mm-hmm.
But when you transition from that active time to a what we call like a rest period, then it's not you go home, you go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It's you then go and your character does something autonomously that is governed
Yeah.
by roles.
Sets things
That
into motion.
And so it can be you go out on the street and you dig up gossip or you spread a rumor, and you don't have to actively do that, but your character goes and does that, and your success or failure is determined by a role. You can also go out and use your connections to dig up information, or you can, if you engage in magic, which most of the circles do, then you can go and pray or research or perform a ritual. Um, all sorts of things that impact the next stage, like the next active stage of the game, but can take 12 hours a day, a week, a stretch of time rather than, okay, you go to sleep, you wake up, and here you go again.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different third-party supplements that you can find to kind of add some more of that to your 5e. So, like in Starfinder, especially, you can spend a lot of time on ships traveling, and you don't want to have to necessarily roleplay 12 days worth of travel, which has happened in a game. And they actually have, and actually a lot of people don't even use it because I'm about to sneeze again. And I kind of really want to, but I also don't want to sneeze. They actually have like downtime activity things where you can choose, like, what are you going to do? Like, oh, I'm going to, so in Starfinder, Brandon was like, okay, we've got this long stretch of time. Brandon had like dad bod. Brandon was like this space cowboy with a gut. And he was like, I'm going to work on my my dad bod. And so he did a whole thing where he spent the whole travel time describing how he was working out and what his routine was, and then he had to roll an athletics check. And if you roll, high enough, then you pass it, like you benefit from it. And it actually gives you a mechanical thing later. It's like within the next 24 game time, 24 hours, you can re-roll or add a plus to an athletics check or something like that. So it kind of gives you a little bit of roleplay excuse, but then also a mechanical advantage. I know that because Shakar was a lot of traveling and a lot of wandering, that Bronze Girl made her own homebrew system where anytime people could work on multiple things at once, but anything you wanted to work on, you could draw a wheel. And then you tell her what you wanted to work on. So did you want to learn a new language? Did you want to try and learn a spell from outside your class? And whatever it was, that you would tell her that, and then she would be like, okay, that is going to take like X number of spokes. So she'd tell you how many spokes. And so every time you rested, you could devote some of your camping time to improving that skill. So at one point, someone wanted to learn a language that another character knew. So they'd sit down, and the one person would roll, I don't remember if it was charisma or intelligence. They'd make a roll to see how good of a teacher they were. And then the learner, depending on how well the teacher rolled, I think got to roll like intelligence with advantage if they did a good job in teaching. And then it was like, okay, depending on how high you roll, you fill 1 or 2 spokes of that. And then once your wheel is full, you've learned the thing. And again, you can work on multiple things. So you could be like, I'm a learn, like, not that any of us do this, but you'd be like, I'm a learn to whittle. And then you spend like one camp on it. You're like, never mind.
And then, yeah,
you're done. You can absolutely abandon things. I know there's an entire, on DriveThruRPG, there's an entire book on like camping mechanics. And some of them are super nitty gritty of like, build your fortifications. Are you digging a trench for your waste? What do you know, and others of it are much more touchy-feely. And yeah, one of the reasons I really enjoy camping is it is a good time for character interaction and chit-chat and getting to know your party. And as Candace so artfully put it earlier on, gay shit.
Right.
Or gay drama.
And so in thinking about this week's topic, one of the things that Kay and I sort of covered is how many aspects of long rests are basically ignored by so many people. You see a lot of one-shots, and so you don't really get long rests in one-shots, or you don't get very many of them. And in short campaigns or long campaigns, there is a big focus on progressing the story and the various types of encounters and combat. But so like with 5e, you're given more than just your combat stats. You have different backgrounds and you have different professions. And so there are things that you can do during your downtime that don't necessarily involve like quote unquote adventuring. Like if you pull tarot cards, you know, you
Who
can
does that?
do readings. Um, you know, we've spent many times talking about one of our characters is a chef who was featured in the last episode of Godplane among other characters. And, you know, his dream is to own a culinary academy slash fight school slash gladiator pit. And he spends a lot of his downtime going to different places and preparing food. Um, and there are other like mechanics that you can engage in that really flesh out the the whole gameplay experience and um making it not just you know, you get up, you go fight a thing, and then you go back to bed.
Yes, Saucefire says it's a pair of dweebs, and it is. And like one of my favorite features of one of my himbo bard that I don't get to use that much because the way this game is set up is we generally have a place to rest, but like there's a background you can have as an entertainer where you can go from place to place and you can just show up at a town with your party and be like, hello, I am very good at entertaining people. This seems like a lovely tavern slash inn. I would like to play for you for a couple hours so that we can just have a place to sleep. And yes, you have to roll a performance check, but when you've got like a +8 performance at level 4,
Yeah.
like it's rather obscene. It's very difficult to not play well enough to earn room and board for the night. And it's just, there are cool ways that you can just show your character.
And with bards, don't they have a thing where, don't they hit a point where they can't roll under a certain level of performance?
Reliable talent. Okay, so reliable talent is a thing that happens to rogues.
Right.
But bards can also just get freaking ridiculous.
Yeah. Bards get. Yeah, I mean, like you start with a +8, and then you just throw a bardic inspiration on yourself. The end.
Sauce is quoting song titles at me that I don't know. So the good news is they can't get stuck in my head because I don't know what they are. Rex says, I have an 11th level bard in the game that I run, and his performance is like 13. It's abusive, honestly. Yes, so one of my GMs for my himbo bard. Ask me about my himbo bard. One of my GMs for my himbo bard made a couple mistakes. First off, she decided that, the good news is my himbo bard finds himself very inspiring. He is such a big fan of himself that she does allow him to use his bardic inspiration on himself. Which that's a mistake.
Yeah.
Then, actually, I should look up what his numbers are. D&D Beyond, y'all. The next problem was we found a magic item that the party gave to me. Which basically means when my himbo bard uses a bardic inspiration, he does not have to roll the dice. You just get a +8 to your roll. Which is, wonderful for me. Wonderful for me when I'm not active. Like, sometimes, you're in character and you're like, I'm going to do this thing which is terrible and should not be done. This is the worst thing we could do, but this is what we're doing, so let's go. So, his performance is a +8. +8 if he gives himself the chance to inspire himself. And then...
Yes, that's base 16.
Base 16. And then on top of that, I believe because, let's see. Jack of all trades, you can add. Okay, I think that's what you're thinking of. Jack of all trades, you can add half your proficiency bonus to any ability check that doesn't already include that.
Right.
But I believe my proficiency is doubled for any ability check I make with persuasion. And then as I thought it was one of these enthralling performance. Anyhow. I think there's something else that he can do that gives an additional thing. So it's just disgusting. Like, it's a good thing that this himbo is a himbo, because if he decided he wanted to destroy the world, he could. And there's nothing more fun than, like, rolling into town and everyone being like, oh no, it's gonna happen. We rolled up to this one town, and it was like, it's the middle of the day. It's very quiet. And I'm like, we can solve that! And everyone's like, oh no. The solution found a problem. Just waiting.
The hammer found a nail.
Yeah. And, charming, like, making friends or enemies of the locals is a great use of your time. We haven't really had the chance, but in my Starfinder game, my soul, who reads tarot cards, will absolutely sidle up to a bar, pull out their cards, and see if they can make, a credit or 20 reading someone's tarot. Also might scam them. They also do that. They're 100% a con artist. So,
Definitely scam.
Oh yeah, they're real good at that. If you seem shady, like if you look like you're being a jerk, they will 100% con you.
If you look like the pockets are deep.
You look like the pockets are deep. If you look like your pockets are deep, but also you're maybe doing some nice things, maybe they won't take all of your credits.
But some of them will go missing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously.
And another thing that many GMs are guilty of, including me, is skipping over sort of like daily expenses, like the minutia of tallying how much your lifestyle costs, how much you pay for it, how much money you have, and sort of doing that every time you have a long rest. But in addition to going into tombs and Indiana Jonesing things for the British Museum for profit, if you're a smithy or a cook or a bard that performs or all these different backgrounds, you can utilize those mechanics to generate income and then take money away from players. And if there's anything that a GM should do, is they should take money away from players.
One of my greatest... It brings me joy because I would be just as frustrated, is in Campaign 3 of Critical Role, which those of you who know me know I have mixed feels about Campaign 3 of Critical Role, right? But they're in this one place where this one city has a whole bunch of it's a city built in different spires. So they're like artificial mountains with this different parts of the city on each of them. And you have to take a gondola between the spires. And it's like 1 silver per person per go. Every time. And
Yikes.
Every time they get on it, Matt's like, that'll be 7 silver. And then they're like, everyone's like, oh, I got it. And the funny thing is, it annoys it because early on, when they were first starting out, they didn't have a whole lot of money, so that 7 silver sucked. But now they've each got like 3,000 gold to their name. And Matt's still like, throw down that silver. And it's like, oh, we still have to do this. And he's like,
absolutely.
How the city makes its money. Public transportation. And like, part of me hates it. And part of me is like, yes, this is also accurate. Yes, this is correct.
And there's a balance of pedantry versus having a good time. But and we're gonna drift further into homebrew stuff
Yes.
a little bit later. But I think it's important to one know these mechanics, so that you can actively engage in certain things and actively avoid certain things with purpose rather than, oh, I don't feel like it. Just like it's important to know all the rules of decorum so that, instead of being a country bumpkin, you actively ignore certain things to make a statement.
Yeah.
Because, anybody can show up to a black tie event um, in their barn clothes, but it's a very different thing if you show up to a black tie event in a tuxedo with the ass cut out of it. Like, technically, technically, however,
Also, establishing
um,
that stuff can help not just a character, but a player who maybe doesn't feel like they're contributing that much. Sometimes, if you're a bard and vicious mockery is kind of all you got, and the wisdom saving throws are not going your way, that's not what an ascot is. Well done, Rex. Um, if I've definitely been in battles where like I'm shooting with a crossbow and that's not working, and I'm throwing out vicious mockery and I'm being really funny because you all know I'm extra. I have an entire spreadsheet of one-liners for vicious mockery and limericks for bardic inspiration. Like I have all of this ready to go. And sometimes I go an entire battle and I'm like, well, I've given bardic inspiration. Like that is what I contributed to this battle, was 3 really well-timed bardic inspirations. That's it. And that feels really bad as a player. But if you're doing that, but you're also the one out performing, and your character is the reason you earn 2 gold in tips and you got to have a hot meal that night, that can really turn around the reason the party sticks with you and the reason the party sees value in you. So do think about ways that people who come to you who've actually put time and thought into their background, or who are coming in with a skill for their character, how can you actually use that? And one of the really cool things we've seen in Godplane is we have taken the time to let Urban Bohemian Brian sit down with Phineas and tell stories around the campfire, and it has a mechanical advantage because of the College of the Spirits Bard background. But also, one of the stories that they told was he went into the background, some history that I gave them before we played, and pulled that out and told a story that was completely original because it was lore specifically written for this campaign and for the characters in the campaign. And then it also had a mechanical advantage. So, think about that because it's really cool. Hey Eric,
yeah,
how you
I mean,
doing?
if you are a cleric, go preach, go proselytize for your god, accept donations for your temple. If you are a rogue, dress up like a cleric and go preach. Um,
Or if you want to
or
piss off your GM and you're a paladin of the flying spaghetti monster, say, I'm going to go make holy water by boiling pasta and watch David lose his
yes,
mind.
yes, yes. Um, or I forget, there was a video game that I played, and I was like, uh, I'm going to steal this idea of a rogue as a locksmith. And so a rogue would go somewhere, set up shop, and be like, if you have something locked that you can't get in for a fee, I will unlock that for you. And you can set up entire adventures based off of these mechanics. Like, if you have a traveling troupe of performers, that put on like vaudeville acts or do Shakespeare or whatever, that double as you know, um, a group of thieves. There's a word for this. But yeah, no,
Oh, I was waiting for you to keep searching the memory banks.
yeah, I'm listen
Yeah,
at like
no,
midnight
I know,
tonight.
I know.
Um, and like like in Japan, the ninja were famously political agents, and so they did espionage, and they moved information around, and all of these sort of clandestine activities that um, that their cover was they were traveling performers. Um, and so you can really build a whole world of like political intrigue and information brokering and all sorts of different things, all based on the mechanics of engaging in your profession and or um, engaging in your downtime.
And the fun you can have with the druid, the literal dog whisperer, the literal plant whisperer. It's great. What was the there was a prompt, and I swear to all the gods, someday I'm gonna play this out. This is one of those Tumblr memes. And yes, this was before we went back to Tumblr. This was old school Tumblr meme gold. That was like, I want to play a druid who is not an adventurer, never intended to be an adventurer. He just sold the party weed and then got caught up in the adventure. Oh, I want to play. I want to play that druid. Just self-respecting pack of thieves. Does more than just steal stuff.
Yeah, I mean, racketeering right there. Like, why work for your money when you could just go and say, hey, give me money so that I won't do bad things to you? Like, that's a great business model.
My freaking Solarian. I think they've said this. I don't know that the party believes them, which kind of makes it funnier. But literally, like, they are this very trained warrior. So they basically roll up to a planet and be like, hey, important people who need to be protected, hire me as a bodyguard. But they're also known for working for the thieves and thugs and assassins. So it's like you either hire them to protect you, or they might come with the other group and try and assassinate you. I'm gonna be in here either way.
Um, but as a GM and as a player, there are many ways that you can add texture and life to your game by utilizing the mechanics of the utilizing the resting mechanics in the system that you're playing. And Kay and I have spent a lot of time, both for Godplane and for other things that we're working on, brainstorming and considering and implementing different homebrew systems.
And in fact, Path and Starfinder actually have a home, like, it is an official homebrew way to put a profession on your character. You have all of your stats that you can assign things to, and you literally can choose a profession. You choose what is the base stat that you use for that profession. And so I actually, when I came in with Soul, I'm like, they've got a couple rackets that they're doing, but the tarot reading is one of them, and it's totally charisma based. And, do I need to fill that out? And Adam was like, just roll charisma. We'll just roll charisma with that. But like, there are very specific ways that in those that you can create whatever profession you want and work with your GM to level it up. And I think that's pretty cool.
So I missed all of that because Rex said I can talk for hours about the show and John Rogers specifically. And so I go Google the fellow. Now, there are some shiny moments in John Rogers' career, and there are some not so shiny moments. Including but not limited to wrote The Core, wrote Catwoman, um, and is responsible for the story of Transformers, all of which, if I meet this gentleman in public, he and I are going to have a conversation about the crimes he has committed. That said, gave us leverage. Also, keeps giving Noah Wiley work, and anyone who does that, I don't mean to slander a man making his daily bread, but I don't need to see no. I would rather see Will Wheaton in whatever role Noah Wiley is on than see Noah Wiley in anything.
Unrelated, I forgot how to read a character sheet because I haven't been a player in a TTRPG in like a month, and I just realized that my Himbo Bard, yes, his performance is 7. His persuasion is +10.
Yep.
And can inspire himself, so that's a base 19,
18.
even if he rolls a 1.
19. Right. And
he rolls a 2, he actually passes, and it's a dirty 20. It's just 20 if you don't roll a 1.
That's and this is ultimately some of the problems that that bards have. And there's a lot of talk, especially about 5e, about sort of power balance as levels go up. Because if you are a level 20 bard, not even 20, if you are a level 15 bard, you are a worldwide pop star.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you are the hottest shit in the history of things in toilets. Like, I'm trying to think of like who currently is like the biggest deal on the planet performance-wise.
You're David Bowie during the 70s. Literally, like, right. My himbo is a College of Glamour, which is literally a David Bowie-esque pop star. You freaking pop your mantle of majesty, and suddenly you are glamorous. You physically change to be more like impressive and cool and glittery. And they aren't even the bad ones. College of Lore bards are evil for a campaign. An evil College of Lore bard will destroy your campaign because they will just take over countries.
Right. Like, if you are Beyonce, Taylor Swift, BTS, or any of the other K-pop groups and or people that I know nothing about, like, your influence is unmatched. You are more popular than the king, more popular than the president, more popular than the head of whatever country that you are in. And if you're a level 20 fighter, you fight good.
Yeah.
If you're a level 20 hunter, you track stuff through the snow real great. But if you're a level 20 wizard or sorcerer, or is it cleric or paladin, where you could just order
Cleric.
your god to
Cleric. Once a day, your god is your bitch. Once a day, you're like, hey, Tiamat, come meet this guy. And Tiamat's like, sure. Hump.
Yeah, and just imagine, like, as a warlock or as a cleric, whatever god that you have, you could just go, hey, come do. Clerics can literally raise the dead. Where it's like, oh, that looks like an owie. What do you mean you stopped breathing? Just kidding.
So long as you have the diamonds.
Right. But at that point, if you're level 15, 16, 18, and not rolling in money,
it's a hard campaign.
then what did you do? Like, message me and tell me what you did.
But, so we, this is fun stuff. This is all, if it's not canon, it's canon adjacent, right? Because these are all things that are built in, but not always used. And, again, we talked about one-shots. Not always the most useful for a one-shot because you don't have time in a one-shot to have all this time around the campfire because you got just under 3 hours to tell a story, to introduce everyone, tell a story, fight a big bad, and do your outros. And these are all ways to make the game more fun, but sometimes you can use camping and resting mechanics to make the game worse, which is exactly what David and I did for Godplane. And of all that we've done, most of you hanging out have seen at least some of Godplane. David and I have done some pretty terrible things.
Yep.
Nothing has outraged players more. Nothing has invoked more dread. Oh no, it's coming. Than the drinking mechanic. I have never seen players react to something imaginary in quite this way. Outside of Travis in Critical Role and Lou in Calamity. David and I have done some terrible things. Equals K is secretly notorious air pirate DB Cooper. This is Saucefire's new campaign. Saucefire would like for me to be arrested and questioned for being the notorious air pirate DB Cooper. We've discussed this several times.
The great thing about oh, thank you very much for the sub.
JD, thank you so much, JD lady.
The great thing about modern setups is you can double mute yourself so that you're never caught on a hot mic doing anything. Mm-hmm. The other problem is that sometimes you mute one and then unmute the other one, but then you mute the other one, mm-hmm. and then the other one's still... Anyway. Oh, DB Cooper. For a brief moment, I completely lost all sense of time and space and reckoning.
Y'all, David insisted on being here even though he's sick. He is sick. He should not be here. He insisted. I just want you all to know.
I serve a cruel taskmaster. Things get hot in the kitchen, and the chef starts yelling, and then you get hit in the head with a pot.
That's your mom. That's not me.
I actually have stories of
I know
being struck
you do.
by kitchenware.
I know you do.
For the purposes of the FBI and their investigation, Kay is not DB Cooper, and we don't know where the money is. But so
they did not have an associate on the ground.
Right. Yeah. No, it was a one-person job. It was a one-man job. And so for Godplane, so there are many different horror campaigns out there, and I wouldn't even call it being like sensitive to, but rather enveloping a modern understanding of mental health issues. Like 150 years ago, if a woman got belligerent with her husband, she got locked in an insane asylum, which ridiculous. And then 70 years ago, they were performing lobotomies on both royalty and like people related to and associated with prominent politicians, just to shut them up and stuff them somewhere. And then PTSD evolved from the 1,000-yard stare to shell shock, to many different incarnations, to now our modern understanding of PTSD. So we wanted to approach the mental difficulties of being in a horror scenario and being in a stressful scenario while also recognizing that calling someone insane or labeling somebody as having madness was not only an inaccurate descriptor, but also a weapon that was used against people. Um, and frankly, an inaccurate and far too minuscule descriptor. Um, and the other thing we wanted to do is we wanted to demonstrate or build a mechanic around the idea of someone who is ostensibly sound of mind reacting to the pressures of basically like sometimes unreasonable uh, things.
We all knew how difficult it was to function just during the pandemic.
Right. And in a very real way, I'd argue most, if not all of us, are still recovering from it. Like if you're in a place where um, the restrictions have been lifted and the rate of infections is really low, um, going outside without a mask on is still like stressful and uncomfortable. Um, but then on the flip side, depending on where you're going and what you're doing, wearing the mask is stressful and uncomfortable. Um, and then also, that's like we've all had to relearn how to be people. Um, even if you were quote unquote an essential worker, like you had to unlearn not being ready to kill every person you meet because they've all been jackasses for like 3 years straight. Um, so, Kay, what specifics did we land on for our stress mechanic?
So we wanted to do a kind of like scale thing where the first little hint of it is just like, oh my goodness, thank you for the resubscribe. How
Wow,
you doing, Brian?
29
29 months.
months.
That's so impressive. We wanted to look at how it kind of started, how it starts at least for me, right? Where it's so basically you're dealing with stress, and you're going to deal with stress either physically, like pushing through it, walking it off, shaking it off, like that kind of, I feel stressed, so I'm going to go work out. Or you're going to deal with it mentally. You're going to meditate. You're going to talk yourself out of it. You're going to, whatever you're doing. So we basically said you'll roll a d20, and then you will add, depending on how you choose to do this, how your character chooses to do this, your strength modifier or your wisdom modifier. If you roll below the DC, and the DC is different depending upon if it's regular camping or stressful moments, we might call for it. Roll below that DC, you're gonna get just a feeling first. Maybe if you rolled with your, I'm sorry, not your strength, your con modifier. If you rolled with your con modifier, you might start getting a headache, or maybe you've got like a stomach ache, or maybe you've got kind of a tight muscle or like a phantom ache in your knee, something like that. Something that's there. It's not impacting you yet, but it's there. If you rolled with wisdom, it might be maybe there's a ringing in your ears. Maybe you feel like something's behind you and you can't stop this urge to look over your shoulder. And we leave it very open for the players to kind of go, okay, how does it start? What is that first thing? And then once you've failed a couple of those stress rolls, it starts adding up and things start happening. And I don't. How do I have the dream magic roll table open, but not that?
Yeah, but not
Uh,
the stress tab
yeah, of
open.
course. Why not? Why not? I'll
Um,
dig it up. I got you.
but okay.
But keep going.
And it's in addition to adding to the horror setting and adding to the atmosphere and texture of the world, it also um gives players an opportunity to not only role play but to communicate things about their character to the audience. Like, I know that, I participated in slash endured some violence a very long time ago, and for many years after, I favored a certain area of my body, going, okay, this is where it was hurt. I have to uh, um, I have to protect this part of my body first. Um, and anybody who's blown a knee or blown an ankle knows what it's like to favor that and to baby that even long after it's recovered. Like, you hesitate and you think a second before you take that jump. You take that turn uh, less vigorously than
You
you might
brace as you
necessarily.
step down. It's like, oh no, it's fine. But ooh,
And all of these things are all psychological representations and reactions to the trauma that we have endured. And that doesn't make you insane. It doesn't make you mad. It is 100% normal thing. And the other really important part of that is, in addition to demonstrating the stress on the mind and the body, it also shows us how we protect ourselves. And there is nothing more reasonable and nothing more relatable than protecting ourselves. Like, you fall down, you put your hands out in front of you.
that's how I broke my arm. Went over the handlebars, did this to protect myself, broke the arm, not my face.
Right. Um, and so that encompasses much more than, oh well, you're going batty. Um, and is a much more fair representation of it.
So yeah, our levels, and I won't go through all of them. But the
Right.
first one is a flavor. It's just like start thinking your character's experiencing something. What is it? And the second level, if you have hit a second level of stress, that little thing is distracting. Kay did not find breaking a bone very humorous. Not very humorous at all. The second, it starts being distracting, and it gives you disadvantage on perception checks. Because you all know, if you ever like pulled a muscle in your back, and whatever you're trying to do, it's just there. The third level, it goes above and beyond that, and you have disadvantage on all ability checks. And the fourth level, you have disadvantage on attack rolls, both physical and magical.
And everyone's been awake too long before. And if you get old hat at being awake too long, like some of us do, then you will find a couple of things. One, you're just not as good at things. Like, there's a reason we sleep, so that you recover your ability to focus. And even
Sauce, you
things that
GM for
are like,
24 hours straight. Yes, you do know
right,
what it's like to be awake for too long.
right,
Hush.
right. Um, even something as simple as like pouring a glass of juice. Like, we've all gone like, glass, pour. Why did that not work? Oh wait, I've been up for 3 days. Um, or even I've been up or I've had 2 hours of sleep in the past 2 days, or I worked 80 hours this week. um, and you start not hallucinating, but you start thinking that you see things at like the edge of your vision, where you're like, was there something? And then you look, and it's like, oh, there's nothing there. Um, and again, like normal um, consequences of exhaustion, normal consequences of um, normal reactions to real world trauma and stresses.
But we didn't just stop there. We
No,
also we did a worse thing. Because everyone's in
we
a dream
did a
world.
delightful thing.
We did something very mean. Everyone's in a dream world. This is not real. But even when things are not real, you can't help but yearn for normalcy. Like that's part of what happens when you are like, that's part of what's so stressful about the pandemic. It's like, just stay at home. But that was stressful because everything we knew was different. We couldn't do the things we knew. We couldn't work the way we worked. Our relationships changed. Our cats yelled at us for being home too much. So we were like, what can we do around a camp that's going to be normal? So we added in some cool things like the campfire sword, which is totally a Diablo reference.
Yep.
Like, I hope someone picked that up.
Oh, no, Dark Souls.
I'm sorry, Dark Souls, not Diablo. Starts with a D. Totally a Dark Souls reference. Hope someone picked that up. And that made something feel normal, and just that little bit of normalcy can help. But we made it very clear. You wake up, you take your long rest, and you are thirsty, and you feel the need to drink. And then we made drinking terrible.
Awful.
Absolutely.
Well, not initially.
No, initially, when Vasal's around, you're fine.
But if Vasal is not in proximity, then the world, when you are not under the embrace of the dreaming god, things get more stressful.
And we have a roll table where we say, okay, roll a d20, no modifiers, and various bad things happen when you roll on this. Not all of it's bad. Like, if you roll high enough, yes, the water tastes bad, but you do gain a level of you lose a level of stress. Like, it tastes bad, but okay, like, this is normal, I feel good. But there's still a taste.
Yep.
And if you all, oh god, the joy I felt of just watching everyone go, oh no, what's next? Like, the first roll was Carrie, and I'm so happy Carrie went first, because it was like, she drinks, she rolls, and I'm like, the water is gritty like sand, and everyone's like, oh, that's so bad. And then Brian and Phineas took a drink and rolled my personal favorite. What is Godplane? David, what is Godplane? Saucefire would like to know.
Godplane is a original horror campaign built by Kay and I, that currently runs on Thursday afternoon evenings on this very channel.
And if you want to see all of it, it is all on YouTube under @ChaoticWholesome. It's taken everything in me not to have my party meet an old man at the fire who tells them, stay a while and listen.
No, I 100% have put, what is Deckard Cain in my homebrew world.
Fun fact, in case y'all don't know this, I did interview at Blizzard a couple times over my career, and if you call Blizzard's front desk, Deckard Cain actually answers. Like, the answering voice is Deckard Cain. Thanks for calling. Stay a while and listen. Just so you all know.
Also, turns out Deckard Cain is the real person's name. There was a contest. Blizzard was like, yo, if you win the contest, we'll name a character in the game. The guy who won is named Deckard Cain.
But yes,
Like,
after
how are you born with the coolest name ever?
some of us are just special. So after watching Dylan drink this gritty water like a champ, Phineas is like, sure, I'll go. Rolled my personal favorite. You feel dozens of tiny little insect legs crawling down your throat. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Candace, I think that's when you all knew you were in trouble. Because that was great. And then I don't remember. Then it was either like the bloody tasting water or it was the lumpy milk. I don't remember which one Peppa got first. Peppa got both across, but I don't remember which one was next. But then Candace. Candace rolled a 3. And poor Bo, knowing something terrible was going to happen, pours the water into her hand and then kind of tries to lap it up to make it less terrible. Yes, terrible me. And the water tasted of bile. And I think if the players could have yeeted me from the call,
yeah,
they would have.
Absolutely.
And every time they camp, like, it's been so cute because, like, Bo, like, in the horrible haunted house, Bo, like, made a little blanket fort. And, like, everyone's, like, all cuddled up and telling stories. And they're like, oh, no, if we sleep, we have to drink in the morning. And again, this party has always opted to drink. You don't have to drink, but if you don't drink, things happen. But you don't have to drink. Yeah,
when that,
sorry,
when
Candace,
that
I'm
stress
not
starts
sorry.
climbing up, you're gonna want a way to make that go back down.
Mm-hmm. So, that was kind of a fun original thing that we did there. Again, it was really peer pressured by a water bottle. It was really rewarding to see Brian leaning into not just the class features of Phineas, of this College of Spirits bard, and like telling the stories, but also grabbing bits of lore that we gave them to tell the bits of lore as if it were part of this class feature. It was like, yes, do it. There is little more rewarding as a GM than seeing people go like, oh, I can take that and use it. And then seeing someone go, oh, that relates to me. I figured I'm going to comment now. It was just like, we did this, a similar setup. Hello, how are you doing, Chris? We did a similar setup in the first season, the first run of the God Plane. And the party dynamic and everything was very, very different. But one of the characters figured out that their story was being referenced at some point. And got like, it was a very grumpy character. They were a very angry character. And they leaned into this super, super hard. So much so that people who know me, and I won't out you, if you want to out yourself, you can, but people who know me were like, that's really cool how you had that character. And I'm like, they didn't know. Like, the audience watching didn't know that the players didn't know that their characters were connected because they just leaned into it so hard. They thought it was like a scripted, hey, by the way, this is going to happen thing. I don't know, Kay. Who are they? I don't know. Do you know? I don't know.
Who can know?
But yeah. And then as we were on Twitter talking about, hey, this is the thing we're going to do, we had Chris Tung, who came on a while ago to talk about some of the cool stuff that he does, and which is he runs a Pokemon TTRPG. He runs a Pokemon game in a 5e system. But But he also, it really was a delightful organic discovery. And he came by and said, one of my favorite downtime things in my homebrew game DM ever did. We all sat around the campfire and told stories about a specific constellation in the night sky, which we made up. And then those things became canon to the lore of the world. And I love that so, so, so much. And those of you who know, those of you who have hung out, know that David and I have a little project that we're working on, a bigger, longer term thing. And one of the goals I put in early, which I swear this is relating back, is I specifically want to bring in some of the players very early on while David and I are still fleshing out some of the details of the city and the world so that they can start contributing to this. Like, oh, I think I either want to play like a farmer or a dock worker or who comes from that background. And I could be like, yes, what are some of the things that your family cares about? What are some of the cultural things that your family does? So that it's not just David and I sitting here going, here's the world. So that we can bring in more of that lore and we can start infusing a bunch of different viewpoints in early. And then everyone who comes in can kind of start leaving their little thumbprint, because Godplane is a little bit my world. I'm literally, they're in a nightmare, right? They're in the dream of a god. I am basically the god writing this. Yeah, I do get to have a lot of control. I'm doing my very best to tie everyone in, infuse everyone, incorporate everyone. But,
if you want to know about the kind of nightmares that Kay has, sit down and watch the Godplane. Because, ooh-wee, some of that stuff.
David gets a lot of texts at like 3 a.m. going, I just had this dream. Is this scary enough to put in? And then my phone rings and David's like, are you okay? Do you need to talk? It's a problem. But yeah, I love the idea that things people talk about in their downtime become part of the lore. There's been a number of tweets too about like, parties resting. They hear a wolf howl. I've got my little pack of wolves ready for an ambush encounter. And they're like, it's a full moon. Is it a werewolf? Jim's like,
it is now.
Googling werewolf stat block.
And I've had a lot of conversations over the past couple of weeks about culture and all the different things that go into it, whether it is clothing or food or your mysticism, your religion, your practices. Like, I know people who are multiple generations out of Ireland who will not step in a fairy circle. And they aren't necessarily like superstitious, and of course we call it superstitious now, or they're not, particularly religious, but they see the little circle of, and like we know scientifically why that happens, and they're still like, not gonna do that. I mean, we, in general, like we knock on wood so that we don't jinx things.
That's why you throw salt over your shoulder.
Right.
That's why we say bless you.
It's why you cook certain foods on New Year's. I've attended weddings where you've jumped the broom. Just there are why you make certain, like, even with the globalization of food and the availability of food the way we have it, there's still cultures and still people where they won't make certain things at certain times of year. Listen, if you don't click the tongs together, Cato says, we click tongs together 3 or 4 times for no reason to ensure a good meal. It is a very important reason. You have to make sure the tongs work. If the tongs don't work, then whatever you're cooking is going to turn out bad. So you gotta give them the clicky so that you know that they work properly.
And two, if you don't click the tongs together 3 or 4 times, how are you going to summon Vita to bless your meal?
Right. Saucefire says, I thought we cooked food because some people are superstitious of something called salmonella. Fun fact, there are cultures that eat chicken raw. There are cultures that eat pork raw. And, we eat raw foods all the time, or at least you're supposed to. If you have not eaten anything raw in the past week, go to the store, get a head of lettuce, take a bite out of it. Take a bite out of the next prime minister of the UK. Um, but yeah, if you go into traditions like Judaism, where at a certain time of year, not only do they make a special selection of foods, but they use a special selection of um, cooking implements that they don't use the rest of the year, specifically for the ceremonial purpose. And there's this give and take with how environments shape um, culture. So, if you're in a nomadic, um, uh, if you're historically from a nomadic people, then you don't necessarily have the same cooking setup that someone who has a permanent residence
That
does.
brick fire oven is just not very travel
Right.
friendly.
And so there's a tradition of not only
Hey, fruit.
light cookware and cookware that's low to the ground, but also foods that can be eaten on the move, like um, a ham and cheese sandwich and a handful of trail mix is very, very different than a cauldron of soup.
I don't even want to be in the K Wild, I'm not going to lie. Saucefire says, fun fact, if you step in a purple circle in New York, you'll be transported to the K Wild.
So going deep into our discussions in what we're building often encompass what is culture, what does culture mean, how much of the cultures of the peoples that we populate our world with influence the world versus how much the geography and history of the world influences their cultures. So it's not just you sit down and you go, okay, we got elves, they like lembas bread, they're assholes, they hang out in trees. Dwarves under the
all
ground.
that is true, but
Right. Dwarves underground, they put rocks in their food, like salt, and so on.
I realized I haven't even shown you this, David. I am so excited for the next time I get to play a dwarf because I went to a big ass candy store in New York and I got giant chocolate rocks. So I can just be a dwarf and munch a rock. But yes, and a lot of times, we've definitely seen within longer campaigns, groups and parties themselves will form their own cultures around what happens at camp and what are the discussions and how does, Legolas and Gimli. What does a culture where dwarves and elves do get along look like? So, right? I love having fun props. I don't know if any of you have ever noticed, but I really like having fun props. I have at least one thing for every character that I can just be like, this is a thing, and even if no one sees it, this is how I'm connected to my character. But one thing I wanted to ask, since yes, Sauce, you are not incorrect, especially according to AO3. So one thing I wanted to ask is if you, chat, have stories you want to share about what is, because a lot of times people are like, yeah, we camp, let's get going, let's get back to it. I love, like, all we were talking about in Campaign 3, because they spent a lot of time going from spire to spire and inn to inn, and we're like, leave the city, go camping. We want that. We want the 2 people sitting up keeping watch around the fire. We want that. Go camping. Get out of the city, go camping. And I enjoyed the game so much more when they were out of the cities and they were camping. So, do you have favorite stories? Do you have favorite memories? Like talking about the constellations that made up. Have you had any cool lore? So I'm a jump the gun here, and I'm not even gonna tell it. I'm gonna make David tell it, even though I've made David tell it a couple times. But we had an amazing while we're camping moment. I have a thing I want to do from our very own Kato that involved spiders and a sun.
Oh my god.
I know. It's so good though. Because I already told thee I'm making holy water.
So, what did you do?
What didn't you do, sir?
You took a sarcastic throwaway line from an NPC and forced me to build out an entire new storyline, tie it back to the original storyline. A new NPC, a new god, and multiple new enemy types, including at least 2 that you guys have not met yet. All because she said, bring me spider venom. And then someone went, how do we get the spider venom? And then I went, oh, well, you just ask him. Now, Vita, Kato's character, what he does is the first, in addition to going around and asking everyone, hey, do you speak spider? And it's like, this is a clandestine mission. Maybe don't let everybody know that you're. But the first instance that I knew shenanigans were afoot, and that I was going to wait for this to unfold, is they're at one of the city gates. They are signing up to be bodyguards for a caravan at the quest location, double dipping. And he goes and makes buddy-buddy with one of the guards, and he's like, by the way, is there like spent charcoal in the fire? And I'm like, yeah, it's a fire. He's like, okay, I dig through and grab a couple pieces of charcoal. And I go, oh no. 2 days later, they're sitting around a campfire, and he's like, do we have like a sheet or something? And I'm like, yeah, I mean, there are many miscellaneous goods in this. There's also a big sheet. He's like, okay, I'd grab it, and I start drawing on it.
And he goes above and beyond because he MS paints it. He actually MS paints
right.
it. I need that to be clear.
And so we're playing, and after a few minutes, he goes, by the way, this is what my character draws on the sheet, and puts it up in Discord. And he made an entire pictogram flag of, hey, I'm a dwarf, and I eat food. You're a spider. You eat food. We have that in common. We could be friends. As if a spider can look at a flag and go, oh, I get what's going on here. These hieroglyphics make perfect sense to me. And then had to pass multiple charisma checks to convince the head of the caravan and the person driving the wagon that he was on to hang this on the side for the spiders. I would like to point out that multiple fights with spiders happened in proximity of this flag, and the flag did nothing. But
the flag did a lot in our hearts.
Since the start of the campaign, I am on my second cell phone. And one of the pictures that migrated from my first cell phone to my second cell phone so that I could show strangers, including strangers at a wedding I was at, the picture that this man drew of the spider flag. That will live in infamy forever.
Yeah, and then I enjoy, David knows, every so often I enjoy doing a little bit of chicanery. And I was like, oh, I can finally get. But I like a good DM. I was like, oh, I can finally get. I can finally cast Bless, but that requires holy water. So, and I knew David. I knew I was good. I was waiting for the bait. I didn't know what it was gonna be. I knew he was gonna take the bait though. I'm like, I'm gonna go make some holy water. And he's like, how you could do that, right? Because I'm a paladin of the flying spaghetti monster. There's no church. How do you? He's like, how you gonna? And I'm like, I'm gonna go get pasta. He's like, okay. And I'm like, and I'm gonna boil the pasta. He's like, okay. And then I'm going to take the water. Get out. Take your inspiration and get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. Angriest inspiration possibly ever.
But yes, viewers, do you have any fun camping stories that were like favorite shenanigans, favorite things, favorite plots that came out of just sitting around the campfire and talking? So we've definitely... Oh, the campfire conversation was when I threw in the red herring that almost completely deterred us and broke your campaign. Yeah. That was great.
Where I had to like stop and go, hey guys, don't do this.
The thing is, that was like 2 games later too. Because I just sat on it. I knew what was happening and I'm like, I'm just gonna let this go. There's a DM that forced my hand hiding a dragon. I don't know if I can call it camping, but Salad's nighttime activities once inspired a new world cult. That is excellent. Rex says players got attacked by an owlbear early on, and the druid nearly cast Thunderwave while he was hiding under the party's cart. That would have been a problem. Supernova says, not really shenanigans, but when I went camping with Adam from EPP, another friend, we did Blades in the Dark character creation around a campfire, and it was so much fun. See, I have too many trust issues to be able to LARP. Like, part of me is like, it would be really fun to like go play D&D in and around a castle and like run around and actually do stuff. But the idea of it, not the reality, I'd never do it, but the idea of it's really cool. JD Lady says, wasn't my game, but a stream I was watching had me laughing so hard till I cried. They told a classic fairy tale, but replaced all the characters with goblins and had a great goblin voice. I love that. See, you don't have to, like... Also, a lot of classic fairy tales are really, like, grim and dark, so if you're only familiar with the Disney version of it and you hear the actual version of it, you don't have to be... I don't want to say not that creative, because that is creative. That is a form of creativity, and it is awesome. But you don't have to, like, be completely out there in order to get there. More detailed explanation coming of Salad's bullshit. Excellent. Rex Faraday says, had a hag nemesis show up while a player was on watch one night, and she taunted him from the edge of the woods, just lurking in the shadows. Oh, boy. Oh, boy. I'm excited to see where this goes. It was 3 little pigs. Goblins. Oh. Yeah, there was this great thing in Dimension 20, and it was the 2nd season of the high school one, Adventuring Academy, whichever one that one was. It's not my favorite. That's not my favorite arc of theirs, but I just don't really like teenage movies. But there was one character who she'd never like had a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and she was the bard, and so she'd always cast disguise self and then like convince older men to make out with her while disguised, and then like run away like she could not be intimate herself. And she met this like half bird librarian who was the daughter of the Adventuring Academy's like principal, and they had like, and she was super awkward, like, and so it's this weird, like, she can't be intimate, she's just super awkward. And so the librarian character writes up this entire contract of like, I have some information for you that I want to give to you. But you first, before I give it to you, you have to sign this contract. And this contract says that, you know, if I tell you, if I disclose this information, you cannot use this information to make any judgments about me.
Famous
like,
last words.
Okay, and she signs the contract. She's like, all right. So I just remember the terms of the contract. If you were at any point to try and kiss me on the mouth, I would not be opposed to it. And then walks away. It's just like the most perfect awkward camp moment of like, this couldn't happen outside of a resting downtime moment. And I love it.
Now I know how I'm going to approach literally every date I go on for the rest of my life. Just be like, sign this disclosure. And now.
I feel like I'm waiting for a couple more stories. Like, I feel like there's a couple stories being typed into chat.
Oh, yeah.
I need them.
Cato says, so Salad thought there would be an impending attack on a city. So he spent all night running into people's houses and throwing all their furniture in the street to make a giant barricade. The DM rolled inside checks for every household. No one rolled over a 10. So the whole town came to the consensus that Salad was a new great artist making a sculpture. Then when the attack did come, the town thought it was performance art. From this event, Salad's war artisans were born into this world.
Incredible. And I will say, oh, continue, David. I see the thought going.
Just Cato has a special brand of TTRPG chaos that too many people, like not enough people can experience.
One of my goals for 2023 is to have the Constructive Chaos episode. And I need to get Cato on here. And we need to talk about Cato shenanigans, especially when we get Vita plus Roxy shenanigans.
Yes.
Because yes, Cato does chaos, but also it's not the I walk into a room and cast fireball on everyone. Ooh, chaos.
There was always a very insightful, logical progression to the shenanigans, for lack of a better term.
Zycrim says, now that I've met Cato, I need to see him play D&D. I will also say, there are some of us, and I don't mean us as GMs, I mean us as players, who will punish you if you do not partake in camp time conversations. For example, one of my games, my GM made a huge mistake and allowed me to play an original race or species. I am playing a vegetation genasi. Oh, welcome, Mimics and Misfits. Shenanigans are where it's at and can lead to some of the best moments of RP. Yes. I'm playing a vegetation genasi. What is that? Well, literally a plant that was brought to life. They are very strange. They have been dormant for 2,000 years, and they speak like this. It's almost singing. They are very strange. Through a whole series of being a particular level, being a plant-based monster, so rather wise, or plant-based creature, and also the observant feat, they have a 21 passive perception.
Yikes.
They see everything. But also, they are new to this world. They don't know what is important. And they are also rather quiet. So the GM was so worried when we started playing this. Because she was like, I gotta send you everything. Like, you don't not see things. And then I wouldn't do or say anything. And she'd DM me and be like, did you get it? I'm like, oh yeah, I got it. And the party was like doing their thing and not, I'd be like, you see, the weird little plant person being like, looking at something, and they'll look back at you. And no one asked. So my little plant person sat there and was quiet and smiling creepily and seeing everything. And it was a good 4 or 5 sessions before someone went, did anyone see anything? Oh, yes. I saw, and just start describing everything that was stolen, everything that so-and-so was doing, all the information that they didn't have. And they're like, why didn't you? You did not ask. Was that important?
Like they say, closed mouth doesn't get fed.
If you know there's a character with a really high passive perception and they're being quiet, maybe ask them questions around the campfire. Maybe it'll help you in your game. Just saying. I could have demanded. I could have sat there and been like, is anyone going to ask? I didn't, because it was more fun to just be like, they're going to regret this later.
There is a creature, I think it's called a topa. But it's a materialization of a thought. And at some point in some campaign, the players will sit around telling scary stories and talk about monsters, and then they'll make one. And I'm really looking forward to that.
It'll be a good time. Well, y'all, we've been at this for about an hour and a half, a little over at this point. So I think we're probably going to call it here. Chat, you've been amazing, as always. Thank you for everyone who came by. I hope that you're all having a great time. Thank you for sharing your TTRPG camping stories. I hope you take these mechanics and this inspires you to kind of find ways to use these. You have been amazing, Saucefire. I'm glad you're aware. GG, everyone. Yes, yes. GG, all. You're always great. Super appreciate you. Always coming and hang out. I have been one of your co-hosts, Kay Purcell. I do all sorts of TTRPG stuff. You can find David and I here every Tuesday, except we are not going to be doing this on the 22nd. 22nd, I will be here, but I will be playing Pokemon because Pokemon is happening, and that is my life for the next, month, basically. But other than the 22nd, you can find David and I here doing this, the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show. We appreciate you coming by. We hope you will come by. We hope if you have something that you would like to talk about or promote, you will contact us and we can have you on as a guest. We hope that you will give us topics of things you would like us to talk about because we really love doing this and you all make it worth it. You can also find David and I this Thursday and next Thursday right here for The Godplane, an original 5e horror campaign. This Thursday is the penultimate episode, and the party has been informed that they are fighting the Nightmare, the big bad of the campaign. What does that mean for this episode and the next one? You better come by and find out, because we're not telling you. Saucefire says, thank you everybody for stopping by. We should be doing this again tomorrow, but how about we find ourselves a friend to raid? Be sure to get your chonky emotes ready and have them. If you don't have them, you can get them super cheap for channel points. Till then, take care of yourselves. Have each other. Sauce just wants to take this over again. Once again, he just wants to take it over. You can find me here a lot of nights coming up this month, the end of the month, playing Pokemon. But you can also find me tomorrow on a new episode of the Emergency Power Podcast, where I'm playing Soul, the tarot card reading Solarian Wanderer. That is a audio-only Starfinder homebrew podcast. You don't need to know Starfinder to listen to it. Jeff is in it with me, Supernova JM. It's really, really fun. I appreciate y'all taking the time to check it out. And yeah, that's what I got. David, what is this? And what have we been doing? And who is you?
Hi, I'm David. You can find me working in the salt mines, trying to excavate ideas and implementation of the next couple of things that we're working on. And we will be reaching out to select people, so keep an an eye on your Discord and your Twitters, as long as we have a Twitters, uh, and your
Ooh.
other spaces where we will come and beg for your giant, gorgeous brains. But this is the Chaotic Wholesome Talk Show, where every week we talk about TTRPG stuff, how to be a better player, how to be a better GM, all with a focus on intersectionality and inclusion. And this week we talked about rest mechanics and how awesome they can be instead of just boring, and how to use them to grow and evolve both your storytelling and the atmosphere and world of your games.
And now we gotta go find, as Saucefire says, we gotta go find someone to raid. Who are we feeling today, David? Who's
It's it's very rare for like no one I know to be like
Yeah.
on right now. That's very strange.
We can go Cypher of Tears playing God of War.
Absolutely.
Let's go see Cypher of Tears. So we'll get that started up. Thank you all so much. We're going to flip over to the ending screen. Thank you again, chat. You are wonderful. Thank you for hanging out. We hope to see you Thursday for the penultimate episode of God Playing. And if not, here next week. Thank you. See you soon. Stay awesome.